Tim Ryan. How's
How
it
are you,
going?
Zach?
I'm
I'm well.
wonderful, Granby. Today we're going to be talking about something on Granby. I'm trying to like
Yeah.
people are like, how you doing? I'm like, I'm Granby. That means I'm good. I'm chill. You know, I'm like what the cool kids say, that slaps. I don't know what that means, but
Uh,
I'm gonna try and get it so that it gets out of people's vernacular.
yeah.
I think
You
we
doing
met
well?
because of something like we're going to talk about today, right? Like
Yeah.
so in some capacity.
Yeah, it is. I'm looking forward to hearing more about this. It seems like there's a lot of people that want to see this happen. I
Mhm.
think it's ready for a resurgence of some kind, if you will.
Okay. Yeah, I guess so.
I mean, it's just one of those deals, right? That man, 2 episodes in a row. The Coco kind of put everybody back in shelter. And
Mm.
it's just really crazy to think that it's just however many years, 5 years after the fact, still trying to get people back into community settings or just to be around one another. I mean, community is a big thing, especially when it comes to coding and vibe coding, if you will.
Whenever I see someone with a mask on, I'm like, you're sick. It's just my immediate thought. No, you're sick. Not like you're disgusting. I mean, like you are actually ill. I mean, is that ridiculous to think? Like, let's say you're at the grocery store. Speaking of the cocoa, let's say you're at the grocery store and you're there every day, and the same, associate never wears a mask. Then all of a sudden, the person touching your food has a mask on. What am I supposed to think?
You're sick.
You're sick. You're ill. Get away from me. Next register. That's what I think.
Where's the where is the hand sanitizer?
Yeah.
Zach, have you found that are they becoming more and more empty, or are they routinely restocked when you go to the dispenser when you walk into a place?
Oh, Lord. That's a good question. I would say 25% actually have a little juice, juice in those things, Yeah. I was at a place, one of them had it, one of them didn't. Same
Hmm.
building. I don't know.
Roll the
I
other
mean, I understand
dice.
it's an expense that you don't want to pay, but also, like when you're in a building, most of those things are never touched. Anyway,
True.
learned something pretty cool today. It's called technology,
Yeah.
and I'm excited to learn all about it. And yeah, today we have a guest, Jake Spracher. I think I said that right. What do you think, Tim?
Yep. Jake Spracher. That's the man, the myth. Welcome to the show, Jake.
Thanks so much for having me, guys.
Okay, so did you grow up here?
I did. I grew up in Hampton
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
And you went from Hampton to where?
to Old Dominion University.
Okay. And then did you study like software engineering there?
I didn't actually. I started in electrical and computer engineering, and that's a big part of, I know we're going to talk about Build Weekend in a little bit, how it came to be. I wasn't always a software guy, and I slowly kind of got pulled more into it, and hackathons were actually a big part of that.
At ODU.
At ODU, yeah. So I started electrical, and then I picked up computer engineering as a double major, and that's what I graduated with.
What years were you there?
2011 through 2015.
Hmm.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. So that's around the
You,
time frame when I would have done Start Norfolk, which is a build a company in a
well, and we spent a lot of
weekend
time in the
at ODU.
Strong. Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool. Yeah, I was there a lot. That was when Nancy Gurdon was there as well. So I got lots of great advice from her and mentorship. Shout out Nancy.
cool. Saw her recently. Great. She's always been a great resource and someone who doesn't just talk the talk, but will also walk the walk. You hear a lot of people like,
Yeah.
yeah, I can help you with that. Nancy has never been one to not do that. And I always appreciate that. And she always seems like very genuinely excited to see
Yeah.
to see
She
someone.
is she is very tireless in her efforts. It's great. She's everywhere.
When that when she took that position, she was not originally expected to take this. I don't know if you were around at this point, Tim. Yeah, you had to have been.
Well, I think that she talked about it on when we had her on the show. I don't even know what episode that was, but
Didn't
yeah,
someone
because they had
bail
they
at
had
the last
interviewed
second or
someone else.
something?
Yeah, yeah. She was on the interviewing committee, if I remember right. And then,
Yeah, and then I remember when I think she told me or someone told me it was her. I immediately called her, emailed her, whatever, and I was like, well, no one thought that was a possibility, but it sure as hell makes a lot of sense.
yeah, she's been a great champion ever since.
So is that where kind of entrepreneurship became an idea to you, Jake, or what?
That's such a good question. I think it was. I want to say that that may have even been the nexus of it. It is getting involved with building software projects quickly. Like I said, hackathons were the introduction. Somehow that got me plugged into the broader idea of startups and entrepreneurship, and I started following like Hacker News. That's where a lot of the tech builders will see stuff, and just saw loads of articles on there. That was around the time the concept of an MVP came into the popular discourse, and different ways of building lean indie hacking. Yeah, I got plugged into all of that.
What's I'm trying to think. The first event was when? That was like year and a half ago, I want to say. I remember posting something.
You're talking the
Uh,
first 757 build weekend.
yeah.
That was 3 years ago.
Was it that long ago?
I want to say that was August 2023. Right. So,
Yeah, so almost 2 years.
yeah, and then I think we turned another one around pretty quickly, February the year after that, and then this has been the longest hiatus between 2024 and 2025.
Yeah, because I want to say that what I because you would because I remember I was like, who is this Jake guy? I think that I got like some random email or whatever. Then I went to the form and I whipped up a story to push out, and then from a traction wise standpoint on the from our web traffic, that story did very well. So it was
Oh,
like, man, that's a an indicator that there is a thirst for something like that. But I do remember that it got a ton of views when that was pushed.
that's cool to hear. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So what? So okay, so you like to tinker. It sounds like you're interested in the aspect of just like what's possible. You did some hackathons at ODU, and then you just said, "All right, well, I know about this space downtown. Maybe I can do something there." Like, how did you think of the weekend? Like, where around that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it might be worth going a bit into my broader journey. So it
Yeah,
was,
let's do it.
at ODU, like I said, that was when I was an electrical engineering major. I still love electrical engineering. That's how I got pulled into engineering at all, was like tinkering on the little circuit boards. And they overlap with computer engineering is pretty tight at ODU. The electrical and computer engineers take a lot of the same classes, and that was my introduction to computer science. And yeah, I was on the sailing team, and like there was an opportunity to try and tinker with a little sailing watch. That was the first thing that one of my computer engineering professors, Dr. Kuchkov, encouraged me to do. Was like, yeah, you could build that. There's this little thing called the Arduino. You guys are probably familiar, where you just write a little while loop, and it's a little piece of hardware, and it has all sorts of sensors, and you can do things in the real world. And I want to say that was the start of it. That was where I was like, this software thing is cool. I didn't know you could just build stuff like that. And then fast forward a little bit, somehow I got connected to BitCamp that's hosted at the University of Maryland. That's a collegiate hackathon. And there's different categories of these events. The collegiate ones are the biggest ones. BitCamp is an example of that, where they're hosted at the basketball arena, and they fill the arena with coders, and like you apply to attend. And if you're accepted, oftentimes they'll cover your travel. There's like a big sponsor pool because all the tech companies want to hire the talent there. And that was like a turning point for my career. Was I went there and built something with my buddies over a weekend. We just with Red Bull were cranking code out all night long, and I left that weekend and I was like, that was so much fun. I just did work all weekend. I could get paid to do this. Like, I think maybe this should be my job. And that was where the whole idea of pivoting towards computers and software came to be. It was kind of a transformational experience. And moving forward a little bit, even I was fortunate to get an interview at Apple while I was in school, and you know, getting through to that panel was pretty tricky. And I remember I was anxious leaving that interview. I was like, you know, what Stanford graduate did they talk to before me? And I'm just this ODU guy. Like they're not going to hire me. You know, I was um, not surprised, but you know, like there's a lot of competition for those jobs, and some of the things that I think helped were like I to the hiring manager on the interview panel, you know, I demonstrated like, look, this is the app I built at Penn Apps. You know, it was a little like blood centrifuge. Um, uh, it would measure the RPM if you were like doing a little if you were in the third world country, you know, and you had a vial of blood and you were trying to do a handheld centrifuge, like it would help you with that. But anyway, I think like having those projects, those hackathon projects on my resume, um, being able to demonstrate like I can build even while I'm in college was like kind of what opened the door for me even to get this pretty sought after tech job. And to answer your question, like how did build come to be? I left Apple. I came back to the area. You know, I have lots of friends here. My family's here, and I kind of wanted to do it again. You know, I joined a startup networking group called On Deck. They had their Foundry weekend. They had a really lightweight template for doing a hackathon that I enjoyed. I kind of wanted to do something in person in the area, and I was just sitting in the startup studios. This was when Hunter and Evans were both there at the time, and I was just like, we could do one here. Like, look, this is a great space for building, and no one's building in here. Why don't we? Have y'all ever thought about doing a hackathon? And they were like, no, but like you could help us with that. And long story short, forgive me for hijacking, but I just wanted to show that whole narrative because might have
Yeah,
liked to hear that when I was at ODU. You know how valuable these things could be.
I did dig that up, Jake, and yeah, I pushed something out in July of 23, and then that did end up being the number two viewed article of the year.
No kidding. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
yeah,
I had no idea. That's so
Hmm.
cool to hear.
I like it
Thank
when
you
the
for
show
sharing
gets
that,
high.
obviously.
I like it when the show gets hijacked. Let's do more of this. Let's the you know let's disruption's okay. You know.
Yeah.
Um. Okay. So interesting. The as soon as you said Arduino board, is that the same thing as a Raspberry Pi? Like or like
They're
I,
similar. So the Raspberry Pi is actually a computer, and the Arduino is a microcontroller. So
okay.
it's doesn't quite have the processing power, but it also can perform computations with lower latency. So like depending on the application, one or the other might be better, but they're in the same category.
I feel like a decade ago, Raspberry Pis became like the thing, and everyone was tinkering with them.
yeah.
And are they still around? Is that a thing? Like, what did anything ever happen to those?
That's a good question. I think there's still a thing. Like all the smart lights in my apartment are controlled by one of my Raspberry Pis. If you want to have non-Apple smart lights that don't want to pay the licensing fee, talk to your HomeKit. You can put HomeBridge on your Raspberry Pi. So I'm still using one. I think people do. Um, but you're right. Perhaps there has been a bit of a decline. I'm not sure what accounts for that.
Huh. So does Apple come to ODU, or do you apply to them? Like, what does that look like? Because you think of a company like that, and you don't immediately associate ODU like you kind of implied, right? You think of Stanford, stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, we have an Apple, we used to have an Apple store in Norfolk, but obviously those are very different things, right? Like, what does that look like? How did you get involved with them?
That actually is a pretty wild story in itself. It started when I was applying for internships, and I had applied for a few, I think Google, Apple, and it was Facebook at the time. Facebook and Apple never got back to me for an internship. Google did. I got an internship phone screen with them. It was challenging. I didn't make the cut. Turning around as I'm graduating, you know, I got another interview panel with Google for a full-time job. They gave me another chance, and I didn't make it through with Google then either, but around the same time, you know, I was like, Apple never got back to me, but I'm just gonna go on Apple's website and, you know, I've only ever applied for an internship. Let me just apply for something. And I didn't even know like on jobs.apple.com, it was like a pretty clunky website at the time. I didn't realize it was multiple pages of job listings. I just thought the 25 on the first page were all the Apple jobs. And so I just on the front page, I clicked on the one that seemed the most interesting. It was automation tools and frameworks. Do you want to like write the software that helps Apple engineers write software? And I was like, heck yeah. Um, and it was right as I was getting the bad news from Google. That was when I got the call from the Apple recruiter, and that's what kickstarted that process. But yeah, the wild thing is I just applied on jobs.apple.com to
Wow.
the first one I saw. But I would say if anyone's listening, don't do that. Like I happen to know I applied for a group within Apple that likes hiring new grads that are scrappy, and like not all of them are like that. If I applied for like a staff AI/ML researcher position, like they wouldn't have called me back. So it's wise to select the job you pick wisely. But that was how it happened.
Did you say so? Did you go to Cupertino? Is that where you went?
Yep, I worked in Cupertino for 5 years. Got to work at Apple Park for I think a little over two. So yeah,
Is
that
Apple Park like the Jurassic Park thing?
spaceship, yeah, wild. I can tell you all sorts of stories about that.
So do you get full access to like could you run around that thing? Like or like do they block it? Like how does that
On
work?
the outside, yeah, people like to do loops. It's exactly a mile around. I
Holy
think
moly.
if you do, or maybe I forget. I can't be a. I don't know if
It
the
can
loop's a
easily
mile
be a
around.
mile. Yeah.
I guess it could be a mile. Yeah, I think so. People would do loops around it. On the inside, the way it's locked down, most people cannot walk all the way around the circumference in the inside. Like
That
Tim.
would have been cool if it was built that way though, to really
Yeah, yeah,
incorporate
it
something like
is.
that.
It is still pretty cool. And like you have access, like the software engineer. It's in little quadrants. I forget what they're called, floor plates now. But like if you're in software engineering, you could get through two or three quadrants before you hit a wall, and then they
Hmm.
won't let you into the hardware engineering lockdown. But
Yeah, you see a place like that, and I just immediately start to think of like Severance.
Oh,
You
why
walk
was I
into
thinking
that.
that too?
Once you go through those front doors, like, all right, you're in, or you're
yeah,
not getting out.
one of my former colleagues actually made the same comparison, and like I personally loved working there in the building, but it's a very all of the spaces look alike a little bit to the point where like I think leadership acknowledged that and was encouraging folks to bring their own character into their offices to give it a little bit more of a splash of color so it doesn't look like, say, the world's nicest hospital. But
Well, yeah, I mean the Apple stores are super clean, and there's not much to them either. So
yeah,
is it similar inside?
it's like a giant Apple store, but I mean they've got the largest continuous curved glass panels in the world. So like if you're in one of those lockdowns, you get a floor to ceiling view of all of the nature. And like there were trees on the campus before, but they like relocated them all to the perimeter and then they brought in like some ridiculous number of trees, like 2,000 trees they planted to try and make a nature preserve. It's like a $4 billion project.
What's parking like there?
So there's the sought after parking, which is under the ring. I think there's like two or three stories of that, and you would need to be there like before 8:30 or 9 to get a spot there. And then there's two like 4 or 5 story parking decks that are adjacent to the whole campus. So if you have to park there, it's like a 10 or 15-minute walk from there through the wonderful nature to your office. But the people still were not happy about that. Like, oh, I have to walk so far from my parking. I always rode my bike. You can ride
Covered?
your bike in, and they have like these giant 2 story bike rooms that have bike racks, and yeah, it's biker's paradise out there. It's cool.
Oh, to be a $3 trillion market cap company.
Yeah, and I left.
Where
Yeah,
are they on the Fortune list? They're Fortune 5, Fortune 10. They're pretty high up there.
they're
Well,
most
they
valuable.
bounce them back between one and two.
Yeah, not
Really?
right
Um,
now.
Apple and Microsoft usually are battling it out.
Oh, I thought it was like Walmart and someone else. Walmart and Amazon.
I think, well, in terms of market cap, I
Oh.
mean, they're the first to hit a trillion.
Yeah, total market cap. It's been like Apple and Microsoft lately.
Hmm.
Yeah, crazy.
Okay, so I went through your bio, I went through your site, maybe it was a Medium site or something like that was telling some of your stories over the weekend, I think. And I can't recall though, you had written a story about leaving because you wanted to come back home to be around family and stuff like that. I believe was the story, something like that. And I mean, is that a hard decision to come to? Had you been thinking about it for a while? Well, has it anything to do with like the craziness going on in the world at that time.
Gosh, I mean, especially now, you talk about a tough decision. I mean, I'm sitting here now in probably the hardest tech hiring climate since 2001 as someone who is self-employed, or at least, working on my own startup in software. So if there's a point where I did regret that decision, it would be now. At the time, certainly not though. But the crux of it is a wonderful company to work for. I mean, the culture varies team by team. You can end up on good teams, you can end up on bad teams. I was on a good team. But the things they don't tell you is you effectively cannot build your own startup while you're employed at Apple. So you are not allowed to write any blog posts. You cannot post anything to the Apple App Store. You can't work on anything that is relevant to the current or demonstrated future business interests of Apple. So it's basically like you are employed by us. If you work for Apple, you do Apple stuff. And you can imagine for me, I've always been interested in startups for a long time. That I got pulled back to that. It was a combination of that, and to be honest, living in the Bay Area itself is tough. You get paid extremely well working at these big tech companies, but I would look at some of the managers I would associate with at Apple, and they would have to make sacrifices. Extremely successful people like making very good money, and they would like buy homes that are pretty far away so that they could have like a normal, suburban house that could have rooms for their whole family, and just work all the time, of course. So,
I,
um,
I remember someone who worked at a TV station when I had a TV show down here, Jake. You weren't here at this point, but they told me that they worked at Netflix, made 350 grand, and basically didn't have enough money to live because it was so expensive back
that's
then.
low for Netflix because Netflix is known for paying the highest. I mean, there
Well,
was
it
a
was 10 years ago, so I mean, maybe
Oh
then it
yeah,
was.
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, there was a point where like half of my team got poached by Netflix. They just say, "Oh, we want all the Apple automation engineers."
Well, and it's that those times are crazy.
Yeah,
All those, I mean, like Zach, the Googles, Netflix, Apples, Microsofts. I mean, they would just hire people with crazy salaries with no job for these people to do, but just from a pure offensive standpoint, get them off the street so that they can't do anything productive for a different company.
kind
And
of.
now,
That's absurd. So,
yeah, now as Jake was saying, things are just getting a lot more lean, as yeah, Twitter was gutted when Elon made the purchase there, and then Zuckerberg took the medicine as well and got lean, and then everyone else started to follow suit. And so, yeah,
I
things are
mean,
a
can
little
you
bit.
blame them? It makes sense, right? It's like, why have all these extra people if you don't need to?
I'm tracking with you. Shareholders like it too.
You guys heard about the tax angle there too? I was recently reading about that. So the downturn, there's like three factors. There was the ZERP phenomenon, there was overinvestment in startups, there was a correction as interest rates went up again. Then there's AI. Nobody's hiring because they think that AI is going to do all the development work. But there's a third thing, which is you used to be able to write off all of, and this is the case for all expenses, period, but software was included. You used to be able to write off all your software engineering expenses immediately as a, R&D
Oh,
expense.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, and that what they changed in the most recent tax bill is you can only amortize it over 4 years, and so it maths out so that like if you're a startup that does 2 million, does 1 million in revenue and like has 2 million in losses, you still owe like a multi-$100,000 tax bill because you have to amortize your engineering spend. So all those startups, like when as soon as they got hit with that bill, they had to cut. So there's so many things contributing now.
What's your take on the whole AI thing? You embracing it, allowing you to be 30% more productive and move faster?
I'm absolutely embracing it, but it's controversial. Like I use it, and gosh, I hear people on various ends of the spectrum. There's people who are like AI is the new electricity, and then some of the smartest people I know are like it's all bullshit. Sorry, I don't know if I could say that. Like so, I'm somewhere in between. I use it every day to write code, but I find diminishing returns. I think the ideal scope to have AI work with you at a collaborator right now? Is it like the function level on the order of like 10 to 50 lines of code, maybe at the class level where you're talking about a file? But as soon as I give it the autonomy to implement a whole feature spanning multiple classes, multiple files, it like gets it right, 75% of the time, but that 25% of the time costs you so much when you're like, oh, this entire feature is actually built completely wrong. I have to redo all that work.
Hmm.
So it's nowhere near, in my opinion, able to replace a software engineer. It makes them more efficient, but I think just enough to keep the narrative alive that software engineers are going to get replaced. But I personally think, these tech hiring goes in cycles and that this is an overcorrection and it's going to bounce back once the investment turns around, once if they change the tax code, if these companies realize what I'm realizing, that this AI isn't a silver bullet. No one's going into software right now because of all of these fears, and I could see the exact same thing happening again. Salaries shoot back up, and then there'll be another correction.
Especially if you have to go back in and you have to edit everything. You have to go back and rewrite everything. And it ends up being, the 80/20 rule, the 20 and the 20% on that is where you have to spend all your time. And if you're going back, you're like, okay, well, this made no sense. And
Yeah,
the brain power to actually find it, to have to tweak it, to rewrite it, to whatever, like, I could see that
Yeah, it's
being
interesting.
crazy.
Just especially in the sense of you take that one step further, when you have it makes it really, really tough because AI right now almost eliminates the entry level position. Because to address that 20% correction, you need a more senior engineer to go in and debug or whatever the proper terminology is. So it makes it a lot more difficult for, I would think, for the entry level developer. What's your take on that, Jake?
and I personally don't think it eliminates the need for an entry level developer. Like, I think you still, an entry level developer, for example, with ChatGPT as a collaborator is more powerful than they were before.
Sure. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
But
but
it makes them more of a mid-level more so than entry level. It was like almost like ChatGPT is the entry level developer now.
I think that's certainly what the hiring market reflects. I'm not sure which trend contributes most to that. I think
Hmm.
there's in general an oversupply of engineering talent, and so of course the companies are going to pick the mid and senior level folks because they can. Whereas the junior folks tend to get hired when everyone's just fighting to get a software engineer hired because there's so much demand. So that's one thing that contributes to that. But I think AI probably does as well. I personally think it's overstated based on my own experiences writing code. Who knows what's going to happen with developments now, but I don't see it as, Devin, the first AI software engineer, was supposed to, be replacing all the junior engineers a long time ago, and I've only heard bad things about Devin, so a lot of it's not played out.
Well, some of the craziness is when people like super like rely on the robots and then they don't check it in any kind of way. And you're just like, yo, like that's sloppy. Like you see some of this stuff and you're just like, even like, so we record these on StreamYard. StreamYard comes up with these clips afterwards. And if you don't watch them, you just take them, download them, upload them. Like usually there's only, let's say it gives you 10 clips. Usually there's only two or three of that 10 that are actually usable for little glitches, for captions that are incorrect, it taking a word the wrong way. And so it's just like, some people just say, screw it, I'm going to do it anyway, and I don't care that there's that error in there. I look at that and like, okay, well, I mean, it doesn't look good. If I'm putting out trash, that's not good for my consumer base, my audience to see this. They're going to associate at some point, well, this is, lackluster. You want to put out a better product. But it's crazy to me how many people don't actually verify
Yeah,
that the thing is even good.
it's really made me question my own values as a craftsman in the field of software engineering. I tend to believe that we are a little bit too cavalier in how we write and deploy code, and in a lot of fields, there's a higher sense of rigor. You need like a PE certification to design a building as a structural engineer. Or in medicine, there's this structured apprenticeship you go through, whereas like we just throw junior engineers, out on week one and they're pushing to production, right? But at the same time, like a cool counterexample is I don't know if you saw Peter Levels. He's one of the more notable indie hacking influencers, and what you're describing is vibe coding, where you just you know don't look at the code. You just have the AI do it all. He vibe coded his own flight simulator. It was very simple. It was like kind of a retro flight simulator vibe, but he's got the distribution. He's got thousands of Twitter followers. The game was fun. He monetized it. He made it so that you could pay some small amount of money for a fighter jet and you could shoot people, and you could pay some larger amount of money to have, a low resolution blimp, flying around this like crappy looking flight simulator game. He was doing like $40,000 a month, and he coded that whole thing without vibe coding. So I don't think it's not a black and white thing. Like who's to say he was wrong to code that thing and make that money? But I don't know how to reconcile those myself personally.
With what you're doing in a couple weekends, I think vibe coding is actually something that could be really useful for.
Yeah,
So back in the past, I ran Start Norfolk, and I've only heard, I haven't heard you really go through the what the weekend looks like, but from the outside, it looks like it's very similar. And
yeah,
so
there it is.
getting people to actually see some traction from a weekend, I think is difficult. Um, but to be able to get something out in a couple of hours, more simply, so then the rest of the weekend you can go out and actually, see what it can do. That's pretty unique to me. And just to see that, in 13 years, 14 years, we've been able to do that. I think and it also like gets your feet wet. You're like, do I want to do this? Do I like this type of thing? Because I think a lot of people are like, I have this idea. Cool, test it for, 12 hours. Do you like it even more after that? No? Okay, then move on. So I like that aspect of that from that perspective. So give us the rundown. What is 757? Is it 757 Build Weekend? Is that what it's called officially?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tell us what it is.
So it's a hackathon. A lot of people are confused by that terminology. They hear hack and they think like start, cybersecurity, like we're breaking into stuff. The hack, I told you I follow Hacker News, right? The original ethos of that word was to hack things together to build. And so hackathon is like let's throw something together quickly over the course of a weekend. That's the gist of it. It starts with a mixer. We're still finalizing the date. I think it's going to be the Wednesday prior to the event. And that's where folks who are interested in participating can get together, socialize their ideas, form teams. Everyone comes into the weekend with a team. On that Friday from noon to about 6, we're going to have some workshops. Tim gave one last year on pitching as an example. That was great. Thank you so much, Tim. We'd love to have you back, by the way. I didn't need to hear
Sure.
about that. It's been we're kind of scrambling to get it going this year. We made a quick decision to make it overlap with Control Alt Play, which is hosted by the Digital Builders. I'll talk more about that in a sec. But Friday, it's build weekend. We're going to do workshops 12 to 6. If you don't know how to build, you can attend those. You can learn vibe coding. That will be one by like Emmanuel Perez. I think Ted Patterson is going to do no code, low code with Bubble. I'll do coding in MVP, things like that, giving you the skills to build something over the course of the weekend. Building starts on Friday. We blow an air horn at 6:30 or so, and everyone gets coding. Assembly runs through the weekend from 9 a.m. to 11, so that'll be the next day. Saturday it overlaps with Control Alt Play. So the digital builders, shout out to Lionel Sapp. He is trying to make events more fun for technologists in the area. He envisions stuff like South by Southwest, where in his words, like we might have a nightclub like atmosphere at Control Alt Play, where there's a DJ, there's music, there's art, there's things you can look at, but there's also people building computers. There's a hackathon going on. There's workshops and things like that. So that'll be overlapping with the build weekend. Saturday is like a do not miss day if you're interested in technology, if you have a kid that's interested in technology, if you just want to see what's up with this whole thing. Control Alt Play is going on. That'll be really cool to check out. And then the building wraps up Sunday at noon. And we have judging, which is also open to the public. You can register for that on Eventbrite through the 757 Collab. And that's where there'll be a science fair style event where folks can go and check out all of the builds. that people did. The judges will be going around, they'll select the top five or so. They will all present to the entire room, and then the final decision will be made and prizes will be awarded. Right now, we've got $1,000 cash for the winner and access to co-work at the 757 startup studios for all three teams. And that's just what we've got so far. We're hoping to line up a few more things before we get going.
So people come with their ideas and then they just go after it, or is there a general theme slash ideas that people build to solve? How does that work?
Yeah, you can come and build whatever you want. It's funny, there's a hackathon, I think it's called like the Stupid Ideas Hackathon, where like the theme there is just like build the dumbest thing you can think of, and it has spawned multiple profitable businesses, just because people want to buy the stupid stuff because it's funny. So we don't constrain what you're allowed to build. For our event, we have it structured so that there's just three prizes for first, second, and third, and you can build whatever you want. We're iterating on that. If you go to like a collegiate hackathon, there's often challenges by the sponsors. For example, when I went to Penn Apps, we won hottest health hack sponsored by Epic, the EHR. Or we could imagine locally like Rise Resilience would do something like best climate hack. It's just tricky because we have a smaller number of participants running this locally in the 757. So we only have so many. If we have 17 teams of 4 to 6 people, there's only so many side challenges we can award. But that's something we're working on growing and cultivating, especially as we grow our sponsor base and our partner organizations.
All right, well, this is not planned, but Tim and I would like to offer all three of the winners a chance to attend the Startup World Cup.
Heck yeah. I'll put that on the website today. Thank you guys so much.
So that, and then, what's interesting? I like what I just heard from the Lionel aspect of that, of trying to, and Lionel's great. And I think Tim and I are speaking on the Saturday day. There's a panel at 5 o'clock that night. So about the World Cup and some stuff. But what's interesting is when I did the first start Norfolk, the genesis was we were doing this event called Drinks Downtown. It was basically just like, hey, like there's some professionals. I use that word very lightly. I was definitely not a professional, but let's just say professionals in downtown Norfolk meet up at this thing called Drinks Downtown. We took it from like
Professional
four.
calves, professional calves.
What?
Your calves.
Oh God, Tim, this is a
Sorry.
professional
Are you,
show.
what are you
You
talking about?
throw me
His
off. Let me
his
tell my
leg
story.
muscles? You said.
Yes, my
Heck.
leg. Yeah.
Oh man.
I look, as a kid, I threw some steroids in there. It was a really bad idea, and they've just it's a joke. No,
Sure you
it's
have
just
calves like the guy on the wall behind you.
I, I wonder what Dwayne's calves look like. I've
He would
never
be
thought
he
about
would be
that.
jealous of your calf, Zach. I
He
did not
might
mean
be.
to
He
hijack that
might be.
conversation.
He might be. Who knows? Okay, so we have the drinks downtown. We took that from like 50 to 200 people. And then because we were like out, like we had moved downtown at some point, and no one was like out on like a Wednesday. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but it was like, look, it's happy hour. It's Wednesday. Like, let's all go get a drink. And no one's there. I was like, okay, well, let's just throw a party. So we start doing this. This is 2010, 2011 timeframe. We are also at the same time, not on the same days, we were hosting like the UX user group, some of the tech user groups, some of the AI, AIGA user group events. And I was like, hold on a second, all of these people are like loosely associated, like they all have a role at a business. How can we take that, put them all on a weekend thing and say build type of thing? But just like you were saying, it's like we want this to be different and collaborative and unique. And so we're like, and I think I got away from this, but the first start Norfolk, we had bands, a couple of bands,
That's so
which
cool.
was yeah, it's hard, like I don't think people who don't host events, who just show up, understand the logistics that go on in an event and how
Right.
difficult it is to try and be like, hey, like, get
Well,
this band in here.
what I'm hearing, man, with like to make this great is, Jake, you got to get your folks all to attend the World Cup. 2 weeks ago, we had Kevin Griffin on the show. He's getting all of his people to show up. Just from that standpoint, both of those developer groups all in one place for the World Cup, it would be huge for just for you guys to grow and just have those serendipitous things happen. Um, that'll be awesome. Let's work something out to make sure that everyone from that's attend the World
Absolutely.
Cup.
I
Yeah.
care. Did you go last year, Jake, to the World Cup?
I haven't made it yet.
Okay. So your co-founder was one of the 60-second pitches last year, if I recall. And
She was, yeah.
yeah, what I find unique about the World Cup this year compared to last year is we are truly trying to make it like the biggest business experiential event with a bunch of people that you would never expect to be in a room. And how can we showcase them all at once, or at least throughout the evening, right? And so hearing that there's, all these groups that are loosely associated but maybe don't hang out and getting them to hang out a little bit, that's what we're
Well, and
tasked
not to,
with.
yeah. I mean, the thing is, so Jake, you get all your people there in attendance, have a great showing, and like back in the day, like Zach would there's a big building down the street from where Zach was located at Hatch, called Dominion, and they would give Zach some cheddar every year because of the talent that Zach would bring into Hatch. So we bring in some folks that have, yeah, I mean, there could be a lot of really cool things that happen as a result to bringing the developer base to that event.
Just like with the school events that you were talking about, how they wanted to sponsor those things so they can get some of the talent, the exact same kind of concept here.
Yeah, and I think we should all think about not only just cross promoting, but how do all of these different components of the ecosystem plug into each other? That's something that
100%.
we've talked about with the other groups. Because with the build weekend, I actually see it as a bit of a pipeline to the 757 collab and the startup studios. That's one reason they're a partner organization. I've been a mentor through their studios is a phenomenal program. I think just due to the nature and the demographics of the area, they tend to successfully attract a lot of non-technical founders that have ideas and niches that they've identified, but there's no one technical to help them build. That's why they usually find themselves meeting with me. Maybe they get a grant, maybe they hire a dev agency, or they pay some contractors. But the best thing for our local startups is to have a technical co-founder on board. And so that's one crucial area where I see 757 Build Weekend coming in. And that's something that our group has identified as our mission is we're looking to cultivate a density of not just technical talent, because we have loads of technical talent here, but especially the founder CTO type of technical talent. And so we could be an on ramp to that. And we plug in to say control alt play. If that group is about just getting people into tech, or Code and Chill is about getting people interested, the hackathon is an opportunity to get your foot in the door and learn some more. And then we've talked about putting together, a weekly opportunity for these folks to continue to build. And then Startup World Cup's another one. It sounds like once you have an idea, once your startup's going, once you're in the studios, like get everyone onto that platform, right? I'm sure I'm leaving loads of people out because there's so many groups, but like Paul Chin and Norfolk JS and Kevin
Yep.
Griffith, all of those communities like play a role in this, and I think they all flow into each other in different ways.
Good old
Well,
Paul Chin, haven't heard that name in a while.
What a guy!
he's
He
great.
he I think got top three at Start Norfolk 3, maybe it was Start Norfolk 4 with a company called Eat Game.
Oh,
That dude's
that's
a hell
right.
of a cook. That kid's a hell of a cook too. He had a little ramen shop for a little
Of course he
while.
is. I didn't know that.
I miss that dude. He's got long
Yeah.
hair now, I feel like.
Oh, yeah. Still
Ball of
posting about
energy.
Nick Cage. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. If you go to Norfolk JS, he made a whole website that's just JavaScript tutorials that are all written as the Nicolas Cage movie storylines. Like you can go to like the Declaration of Independence one, and like it's like we're gonna write some code to break into the building to steal the Declaration. Like it's hilarious.
Ugh, man, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a good dude. Well, I'll tell you, man, we'll get your folks here. Well, we are more than happy to we'll do a revenue split. Any of the all the tickets that you guys bring to the World Cup, we'll kick that back into your
Oh, that's incredibly gracious. But yeah, we'll absolutely either way just get your your name on there. Let's do that.
That'd be cool. Yeah, our big thing, man, is just and Zach and I mean, they Zach, we say this if we're not tired of talking about it, then we haven't said it enough, but I feel like we never stop talking about it. We just want people to show up. It just that's the big thing. We want to fill every seat in this house. Until we get 1,000 people, man, we're not going to stop talking about this event.
Am I tracking on your mission correctly? To me, this event seems like the platform for our local startups to gain broader visibility. Is
That's
that
the
how
big
you see
deal,
it?
man.
Okay.
I mean, like, dude, we want to capture the attention of how awesome would it be if we capture the attention of the Googles or the Apples, and they're like, man, this scene is popping. We need to invest into this. But it all starts with this initial spark and doing the storytelling aspect to bring light of all this, man. Otherwise, we could be the greatest thing ever that no one has ever heard of.
That makes so much
So.
sense.
Yeah, I mean so that's the big thing, man. This is our chance. One night, one stage, one group of people, all there to make the biggest sound, biggest bang that we possibly can.
And to echo that or to piggyback that, I would just say it's it's not, yes, it's a pitch competition, but it's not really just a pitch competition.
It's not,
And
yeah,
like it there is absolutely that aspect to the event, to the night, but never. And I've seen some stuff decently close, but never have you really had that many different aspects collectively at that size in one room. And, I think we all realize and recognize the talent and opportunity and potential. And it's like, okay, like we
dude.
are capable of doing this.
That's right. I'm so
Let's
tired of
show the world.
hearing. That's right. I'm so tired of hearing everyone, we don't have any technical talent in this area. I was like, dude, come to this event. There's 300 of them right there. One spot. There's 300. Just let's go. I mean, I would love to be able to, or 500 of them.
And
Yeah, that's that.
I feel like the technical talent feel the same way on the opposite side. Like, why aren't these people looking for me?
Right.
And it's if we have to be the bridge
Catalyst.
to do the
Yeah.
catalyst. I was trying to come up with a fun word there. I couldn't think of one. I don't think I've completed my Elevate app today. Um, but the bridge to really do that, I mean, it it could be just something really special. And um,
I mean, I think that we're getting there. We're making great strides. So, Jake, you
sure.
may not have
Yeah.
heard, we got Tech Night. That's going to be happening in October. That's like the Grammy Awards for our region for innovation, tech, and entrepreneurship.
Too cool.
So like, dude, this year the presenting sponsor is JP Morgan Chase. I mean, that's a big company
Yeah,
that for them to want to pay attention and do something here. That's a
I
huge
think
thing.
they're
It's a huge
Fortune
statement.
11. I looked that up.
Yeah.
wow, I didn't know that.
I didn't
So
either.
that's a great thing, and so like that to me is an indicator. Like, yep, we're paying attention to Hampton Roads, and when these startups become bigger startups as they get into their Series B, C, they need a place that can handle those kind of big moves, those kind of M&As, IPOs. So they're paying attention, and they're putting their money where their mouth is. So that's awesome.
That's so awesome.
And not to mention something that we haven't actually talked a lot about on this show over the 266 episodes is that there's something unique that if we were in New York City, if we were where you were for 5 years in San Francisco, we would not be able to accomplish this. But because we can and are and will continue to, big fish, small pond type of thing, or maybe I'm getting that, analogy wrong, but that aspect is very unique to actually be able to be players in a place and build and
Yep.
something for the future. Like you try and go into San Francisco today, good luck. Not to mention you go to Subway, you probably it's $40 for a 6-inch sandwich. Like, come on. But gosh, how much is one egg over there? $19 for one egg, $22 if you want it scrambled. But to be able to literally anyone listening to this show or anyone that goes to Build Weekend can literally be developing the future of our community, one tool at a time, one conversation at a time. Like you never know just from those synergies what can happen from that. And that's difficult at other cities. In our community, it absolutely is a possibility because all three of us are living proof of that. You
Yeah.
know, in 2010, I was working in TV news. 2 years later, I was starting to do all this other stuff. And then, 13 years later, I'm meeting you. So, like, it's totally a possibility. And I think that's extremely awesome.
Hmm.
It's fertile ground for sure. I think our biggest challenge for me, I'm a passionate urbanist, which doesn't necessarily mean like we need to build skyscrapers. It's just we need to cultivate communities where people interact with each other. And I think that's such an important problem where if we could solve it, we would solve all the other ones. We would solve political division and inequality, and we would catalyze innovation and the loneliness epidemic. If we just made it so that everyone just doesn't stay in their house and get in their car and not bump into other people, I think that's something that would serve us well. And I think that's one reason why some of these other communities, like you mentioned, New York City, are able to grow so much. And I'll just say while I'm on here, like a lot of the leadership in the cities in this area, I don't think they really get that. I've heard Virginia Beach, I think it was the mayor or someone was quoted saying in opposition to the light rail, we don't want to build ant colonies along this thing. Virginia Beach offers something different. By different, they mean suburbs and strip malls, which is actually not very different at all. And they said if young people don't want that, they can go to Denver. And that just breaks my heart because Denver has such a great startup community. And these very same people are saying, why aren't the young people staying? Why aren't the technologists staying? And that's another problem because as all of our cities they're disconnected. We have so much water. We literally have to cross water to get to each other. So just doing what we're doing, getting people to bump into each other, and also thinking about maybe building our lived spaces differently, I think could help this as well.
Yeah, that would be pretty great. I mean, as we continue to grow these companies, they're going to need buildings, and we are it. One thing that I learned, and I wish that I would have learned a lot earlier, Jake, is that like for many years I waited for someone to step up to lead the charge that needed to happen, and it took me far too long to realize that person just wasn't there, and it requires us to step up and be
It
that
feels like you're the
change.
voice. You penned that piece, and I was commenting the same stuff on that piece. I forgot what was the name of it again. You know the one I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, the real reason Hampton Roads hasn't hit its full potential, something along those lines. But
Yeah,
we're it, man. Just we just got to the point where it's like, dude, it's just not going to happen, uh, and someone's got to do it.
yeah.
So let's take a big swing.
Someone is you. That's someone's Zach. That's someone's. I'm sure all the
It's
folks
all of
you're having
us.
on this show.
It's
I
all of
think
us.
I, I think people might have a hard time hearing this from me, just for people who know me from the past. But like, it really is not about me. It is really not about Tim. It is about how can we take what our skill is and share other people's opportunities to the world.
Yep.
Now, sometimes that means we have to be loud because people will watch us, and maybe that's annoying to people. But because people listen to us, we're using our like
I am
soapbox, our
I
our
am
platform
very
to be able to reach others as well.
yep.
And it's like, I promise you, at this point in my life, it is not about me at all. It is about doing other things for other companies. And it's like, I have, I understand a lot of media and attention, things like that because of prior lives and not prior lives, but if
Previous
we're
chapters.
living in that kind of simulation, maybe it is previous lives. But I understand why some of these things get attention, and I'm very bullish on being loud from the attention of let people see it. And I know a lot of people are scared to do that for a
Well,
multitude of reasons. And it's like, how can we just share their message out so that more people can see it, so that it does
yeah.
rise?
And that's the whole thing, man. It's just like, dude, And I agree. I'm 100% conscious and cognizant of the fact that this is not about me either. My thing is that I want founders to focus on founding. And then because we've been doing this for as long as we have, let us focus on getting the check writers and the investors and the companies here. But unless we have great founders doing awesome founder things, those two things need to happen. And it always breaks my heart when founders like all of a sudden lose focus and they're like, oh, I'm going to do a little pivot and I'm going to do this. It's like, no, focusing on being a founder, get customers, generate revenue. Those are the things that we need founders to keep doing. And if both of us, everybody involved in this party continues to work together, that's what it's going to take.
Yeah, because it's not just connecting people and cultivating density, but also cultivating the right mindset. I think that's something that's special about Silicon Valley in particular is that the startup ethos kind of runs through everyone there. And some of the things that you mentioned, about not overbuilding your MVP, right? Like focusing on just get something out there, get validation, um, fail fast,
Yeah.
get your letter of intent signed before you go build the whole thing. Like these counterintuitive startup principles, the more that we can advocate those and make them permeate our community, I think the better our startups will do as well.
Yeah. I don't know. I certainly don't have time, but it would be really interesting if there was some sort of study done on this region in terms of like, I don't know, like I don't think that we have the swagger, as much swagger as we should have. And I think that like, because we come from a shipbuilding type of area, more blue collar area that like we don't feel like anything is necessarily owed to us and we
Yeah.
just continue to work hard and not tell
Yeah.
our story.
Yeah. That was the
Tell that
crux
to
of your piece, right? It
tell
was
that to the people of Pittsburgh.
Well, but the thing is though, and trust me, like dude, and I come from the Rust Belt, so like Buffalo, Detroit, Flint, Pittsburgh, all that whole area, and we talked about it the previous show. Scarcity creates innovation. They had everything going for them for with the automakers, the big three automakers, but then, dude, when manufacturing went to Mexico or went overseas, then that created that scarcity. And so now Pittsburgh, they reinvented themselves. So yeah, it's interesting.
Here we go. Pittsburgh's not going to the Super Bowl again. That's my song. Anyway,
And what do you think about? Well, maybe as we're wrapping, it is curious. We've not talked about Aaron Rodgers being a. I'm just curious your hot take.
I'm not saying this on the internet, but actually, here's what I will say. I do believe he is one of the top 32 best quarterbacks in the NFL, even at 41, 42 years old. And as we all know, there's probably only 20 actual quarterbacks that are good enough.
Where did Russell Wilson go? Is he
I
signed
think the
anywhere?
Giants. Talk about a skill set that is absolutely difficult to be like one of 20 people, one of 32 people in the world that's good enough to get that job. I mean, jeez, that's crazy. Anyway, Jake, tell us anything about the weekend that we haven't talked about that we should talk about.
that was the core stuff. I mean, it's the pitch here, I think, is really to prospective participants, and I was said it as loud as I can. I think it is just such a tremendous opportunity to one come in and experience that feeling of building. It's so much fun. This year we're using DevPost, so when you do submit your build, it goes live on a website. You can have a video, you can have screenshots, and my hackathon builds are still on DevPost. So you can link those from your LinkedIn, you can link them from your resume. I mean, to be able to point to a real product that you built, especially if you won something while you were in undergrad or even while you were teaching yourself to code, is such a great credibility boost. It's an incredible opportunity.
Um, I'm gonna throw a curveball at this one, Zach. A little change, dude. If there was one place that you could cater from that would bring all the developer folks in because the eats are great. Where's the place that you would cater from?
Like which region to source? entrepreneurial type of
Well,
realm?
no, here locally, like, and you knew that it was going to get there hot and fresh, and that everyone was going to love it. Man, where would be the one place that you want to bring in
So
to
you mean
feed
like
everybody?
local? Oh, you're
Yeah,
talking for food. You
yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah.
Oh, got you. What food? Oh, that is such a
He
great.
did a terrible job of announcing this
Okay,
question.
I'm glad it
Yeah.
wasn't me. I thought he was like,
He's like,
what region are we bringing Startup Town from?
No,
He's
no,
asking me
my bad.
about the food. He's asking a much more important question.
Yeah, yeah. Because it can't, yeah, yeah. Typical beer and pizza thing. You know, we're going bigger than that. We got to bring in high quality food.
and just because you don't know that they cater doesn't mean that they couldn't cater. So
Right.
any kind of food, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, nearby, especially for fine dining, I gotta shout out Luce is my favorite. Very hard to beat on Granby Street.
Yeah, but you should go to Luce Segundo.
I've heard mixed reviews about Luce Segundo from my friend who works at Dollar Tree. I don't know if they've gotten better, but he said he didn't enjoy it on their initial launch.
Yeah,
Um,
well, your friend needs to reassess their palate.
Reassess it. I will deliver that message then, because I'm sure it's much easier to get a table at Luce Segundo. What else is really good? I mean, I like Luna Maya.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, if you're looking for like
Ned
casual,
Lilly, that was his place.
that was his place.
That's
I
Yeah,
think
right.
he said he's been there 10,000 times. They have a plaque on one of his seats. 'Cause he said,
Oh, for real?
was he joking about that?
I don't know. We haven't, yeah.
yeah. The pique al macho there in particular, I would say is my favorite dish. But
So no, Mr. Shawarma.
I mean, yeah, for like fast casual, Mr. Shawarma is definitely my go-to. So in the Bay Area, there's such a wide diversity of cuisine. I feel like there's a lot of immigrants for tech, and for whatever reason, there's loads of Mediterranean restaurants. One of the ones in San Jose, I think Guy Fieri said had the best falafel in the U.S. or something, and I think Mr. Shawarma is on par. Their falafel, you have to wait for it. They throw it in the fryer when you get there. It takes like an extra 2 or 3 minutes, but their falafel is to die for if you're a fan of that.
Do you know Jared Beasley?
I think so. That's
He
familiar.
runs Astoria. It's upstairs, third floor, I think.
Oh my God, yeah, I just met him. I do know
Okay.
Jared.
I'm pretty sure I introduced him to shawarma. And I know he does, or at least used to do all their work. So he did all their graphics and their website and stuff like that. Um, but if you're ever looking for good food too, he
Knows.
like low key like knows everything. He's the one who told us about the Donut Dugout, which is 1900 Granby Street
Oh,
down
I
the
heard about
street.
that. I haven't tried it yet.
Man, we should have left you a donut this morning because we
Oh
had them
gosh.
today.
Zach
So,
got his workout in this morning. He had to carry two
okay.
boxes of, or last week, he had to carry two boxes of donuts, about a half a mile.
Got his workout and then he just took all those calories right
But
back.
shockingly, no, like this was literally 15 pounds of donuts.
Wow.
I didn't think it was gonna be that heavy. The apple fritters were 1 pound each. Unbelievable.
I gotta try it. I'm a fan
Yes,
of donut.
it's unreal.
What
Jake, I'm looking forward to meeting you in person in a couple of weeks. Appreciate all that you're doing for the area. And when we say, if there's anything we can do to help, please do not hesitate to ask, to get an introduction to someone or hey, run something by. I think that's it's important to be able to have that person to say, hey, well, what do you think about this? Like, where could I get with this? So,
100%. Thank you.
Thanks, Jake.
any last words, Tim?
Dude, I fumbled so bad on that last question. I'm done.
But it was a great, I think the quality of the question makes up for it, really. So,
Because it came from the heart.
yeah, it's a thought
Yeah,
that
well,
counts.
we'll give you a pass this week,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Ryan. Like, subscribe, download. Thanks for watching.
See ya.
Peace.
Guys.